Sawtooth Dave, what's happening, guys? Welcome back for another week of sitting and bullshitting in the shop. Me and Hot Rod just got back from a little rip. I was talking to Bearded Dune this morning about some nice other things, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm about to jump on the bike and go for a ride." And I was like, "That sounds like a fabulous way to start a Sunday." So that's how we started our Sunday as well. Well, so I got let's do the grind one first. I got this one regrind. I think I said it in the collection video that I was going to regrind it, but it's this EOS Surgeon or Sturgeon. I can't remember. I think it's called the Surgeon. This is pretty much nothing like a Surgeon at this point. And I kind of want to show you guys a close-up, so I'm just going to flick it out there. I did a hollow grind, regrind on this one. I won't put a close-up on it because I kind of want to show you guys up close. Excuse the mess up in the shop, but, you know, it is what it is. I'm just trying to get stuff done. But anyway, I wanted to show you guys up close. So this is a EOS. I reground this all hollow ground so you can see it nice and thin now. I don't know if that shows up with the shit the way I'm angling it here. Trying to figure out where that camera, there it is. There, okay, there you go. There you can see it better. So nice, good hollow ground on both sides. I think this one came out really well. Pretty happy with the finish. I took this one all the way to 220. Also took the studs back out and turned them in the lathe and put a little bit of a step notches in them so it's easier to actuate. This one's on phosphor bronze, but this is pretty much nothing like a Surgeon at this point. So I reprofiled the blade. I did a video on that a while back. What do you call it? Blast all the anodize off the tie. Added some relief to the inside here where I can actually get to it. What else did I do? Made the pocket clip, installed the pocket clip. So yeah, everything's pretty much redone at this point. Nothing's like it was from the factory, but EOS Surgeon, I believe, is what it is. But I'm pretty happy with that one. That's the first one that I did on the hollow grind, the whole thing like that. That I was like, yeah, that turned out really nice. I did Mateo's earlier, his little fixed blade he sent for me to practice on, and it came out pretty well. But I'm really proud of the way this one came out. So even by comparison, so here's a BGM regrind. So I'm pretty happy with the quality of mine. I'm you know, looking at BGM's quality and look at my quality. Like I'm pretty happy with how good mine are coming out right now. Not to kind of toot my own horn here, but I'm just excited that I'm finally progressing, I guess, to a, like, this one's actually what I would consider almost professional regrind. Oh, I think it would actually. It's good. I like this one a lot. I still need to put a better edge on that one, but it is what it is. So last week, or midweek, if you watched the Lotto draw, and I talked about last week's video, Mateo won the lottery. So if you guys don't know Mateo, I was just talking about a minute ago with the hollow grind. Mateo's a super generous guy, like pillar of the community. And if you don't know Mateo, you probably should. But he makes awesome beef jerky as well. But that's just a side thing. Like, you know, he's been a pillar of the community forever, it seems like. So if you don't know Mateo, get to know him. He's a super awesome guy. But anyway, Mateo won the Sawtooth. Before he'd even won, me and him had talked, and he was like, you know what, man? If I win, I'd rather someone get one that doesn't have one rather than me have two. I feel guilty about that. So let someone else have that. And I was like, dude, if you win, your name's already in the hat, then it's your choice to do whatever you want to with it. And when he won, he said, dude, I'm just going to trade Carco for it anyhow. So I don't know if you guys know Chris Carco. But Mateo is going to just trade me and then turn around and trade Chris. I'm like, just give it to Chris and me and Chris will work it out. And he's like, all right, that's fine. So Chris had just got the T1000 in, and I was curious about it. So yeah, this one's already different, and I'll go over it here in a second. But I went ahead and swapped him for the T1000. So the T1000's Chinese knife, if you didn't already know, is Riot. I handled the prototype for this at Blade. You know, at Blade, you're not really using it that much. You just kind of pick it up, look at it, you know, examine it, and that sort of thing. And, you know, you get your little feels for like half a second there, and then you put it down, and either it leaves the memory or it doesn't. But Blade 22, not this last blade, but blade before that, I got to handle this one. And I even mentioned when I got back from that video that that's pretty much a standout for guys who like Chinese knives. It's one to look for. Okay, so that's what my memory of this knife was. So I got it, and I'm gonna actually take it apart here in a second, but I got the parts over here in the bag. We'll zoom in and I'll explain some of that. But it's got these secondary locks that kind of push in, and like, you know, like this knife right here. This is a artisan proponent. It's got the little pin thing you can put in here, and, you know, supposedly makes it safer or whatever else. But I've never been fond of secondary locks that don't take the load. So in other words, if this kept, you know, if it was locked out and it was no movement when I pushed the lock bar out. There was still no movement in this pin. Then the pin would be taking it instead of the lock bar taking it. Instead, what they do is make it where your lock bar is going to fail, and instead of failing and falling in your hand, it falls on the pin instead of your hand. So you're pushing the knife. I guess there's two different ways of thinking about it. To me, that's kind of more hokey pokey. I'd rather it lock out with a pin and screw into that pin fully locked and not even engage the lock bar, so that the pin's taking the brunt of it, not the lock bar, if you're going to use it that way. Me personally, or at least at the same time. So like the secondary lock things, like I've never even put the pin in this thing. I got it probably in the box. I don't think I've ever took it out of the plastic, but I think the secondary locks pretty much hokey pokey bullshit anyhow for me. So when I got this one, I was like, I'll try this whole thing. So basically you push these buttons in and then you can deploy it or retract it or whatever, you know. But if the buttons are pushed in, you can't. Well, the problem with it is, as you're carrying this thing, it's easy just to hit the button and you get it out and you lock yourself and you're like, oh, it's like a death grip on that trying to deploy your knife, and it's really freaking annoying. So I got this in last night about 7 o'clock, and probably about 7:15, 7:30, that came apart, and I took that out of there because it was just too annoying. So I guess this is kind of turning into my review of the T1000. Okay, so give me 1 second. Let's blow this thing apart and we'll talk about it some more. All right, so I got everything loosened up on this thing. So basically, that's the pivot. This is the screw that goes into this little bracket. It'll make sense here in a second. I'm just trying to keep everything together. And then the body screws, you just pull it apart like normal. I have to say that. There we go. All right, so nothing unusual on this part yet. It's all up into here in the inside, but you can see what the inside of this one looks like. So multi-row bearings, which now that I've played with a couple knives with these multi-row bearings, I think these multi-row bearings make a ton of sense to me. A lot more stability. If you're going to run a bearing knife, I like this idea a lot. Now, if I start making, I'm probably going to incorporate something like this into it. Okay, so there's a couple issues with this knife, for me at least. So I went over to secondary lock, and I guess I should have done it before I pulled it apart, but you can't really reach these thumb studs to thumb flick it or to finger flick it very easily the way it is. So I figured I got to do some kind of mod to do that. So I did take this apart before, so it's not the first time I took it apart, but just to show you guys, I may have to, there we go. This unscrews, which makes it a lot easier to modify. Whoops, I'm just flinging across the room here. And there you go. So it's basically, you can see a shoulder on this one and a shoulder on this one. If I can get my hands to hold right. There you go. So it screws in the blade. The shoulder holds the force in the blade, becomes the stop pin and thumb stud. So these are shorter than they need to be. So they basically need to be, I don't know, 16th, maybe 100 thousandths, 60 to 100 thousandths taller, and then some kind of texture on them so you can get to them and deploy them. So I'm going to go in there when I get time and try to make some more on the lathe to make them taller and see how they turn out. Okay, so now to the nitty gritty and basically what I wanted to show you about this, the insides of this knife. Let me see if we get the parts out here. I'm gonna try to talk it through it, but make it make sense, and hopefully it will. But you know, it's a complicated knife. It's not something that, if you've never seen something like this, it may or may not make sense. But see if I can lay this up there. So this is the part that basically, when you push it forward, pushes that pin in and makes the pin come in. And I'm gonna kind of lay it out how it is. So it's retracted or held in captive by this teeny tiny, and I say teeny tiny, I got to show you guys. See if I can block this out over here. Block that out. Focus, grasshopper. Is it gonna focus? It ain't gonna focus, is it? Let's try this. Do this instead. There we go. See that little bitty spring? That's what it's focused on. So, or what it's retained on. So that spring goes around a pin. Let's see if I can point to it easier. A pin here and a pin here. So imagine this little spring here, and that's what's holding this in, which is pretty weak as it is, right? I don't particularly care for that. And then it has this basically bar that travels. So the bar hooks on this other end of this little slide release thingamabobber. Something like that. Let's see how it moves. See how it's traveling. Let's see if I can get my hands out of the way so I can show you. See how it travels. So on this other side, you'll see it's got a little groove up in here that rod's in. Can you see that? Okay, so that's what's moving in that groove. And then let's take this plate apart. I gotta grab a T6 real quick. Take this plate apart and show you what's inside of this. So basically, I got the gears already laid out, but this thing has gears in it. So like this whole process or whole design thing absolutely makes no sense to me. It's a hard. It's this is nice. This knife is designed to be like a hard use knife, right? Like they did good with the steel choice. They chose 3V. 3V has shit edge retention, but it's strong as hell. That's just what it's known for, right? So I'm gonna dump the screws out. Sorry if I'm going too fast for y'all, bumping the camera around and everything else, my phone around. I just want to kind of get it open so you guys can see what's going on here. So this is like a cover plate right here. So just a cover plate. So the little thingamabobber that we were showing about a minute ago, talking about a minute ago, it slides on that. I don't know if I can get this thing over here. If I can hold it. Little itty bitty parts are so annoying for big hands, man. I don't even know how to describe how annoying this is. Maybe if I get the right one, it'll go in the groove. Did I get the wrong one again? No, there it goes. This is the right one. Okay. So there we go. Fits in the little groove. I may have this upside down. I do have the wrong one in there, do I? I can't remember. Okay. Either way, I'm fumbling around behind the camera and I can't really see what the hell I'm doing. So I don't have my glasses and I can't see nothing anyhow. But anyway, this hooks on the pin of this slide. So the slide's like this now, and you actuate it forward and backwards. You can see I might have to zoom in again, but there's teeth on the end of this. I'm going to zoom in real quick. So see the geared teeth right there? They engage with a little gear, which is this little guy, who rods on the pin inside that. So that little gear rods on that little pin. Okay? And that gear engages, and this is getting complicated, but it's a really stupid situation here. So this pin engages these gears. So as you're turning it, it's turning, and this has like drive dogs on it, kind of sort of like a compensator for a motorcycle. See the little drive dogs there? And they engage and pushing this back out. And see, this has 3 pins in it to keep rotating, and this snap ring to keep it from when the drive dogs push. They have to push on something, so it's like the engage in the drive dogs. Okay, so even if the system was good and worked functionally, it didn't. And you know, when you're running your knife, you wouldn't accidentally hit this. Look at how much stuff is in that, man. To get full of trash and stuff for a hard use knife makes 0 sense to me. Like absolutely no sense why you'd overcomplicate it and put all that crap inside this knife just for a secondary lock. I mean, the pin thing on this one is at least simple enough that, you know, you're not running it, you can stick your pin somewhere, you know, lanyard or whatever else, or however you want to carry your pin. So you got the pin. This makes no sense to me at all. So give me a second, I throw it back together. And before I throw it all the way back together, I just kind of want to let you see that there's no pins in the back of this at all. 0 pins. So screws from one side into a backspacer, and then same thing on the other side. So this backspacer will come out, and it's just the backspacer. But do you lose the look of that little slide thing? Because I did like the look. Let's see if I can set it up there, show you guys what it looked like before. So as you had that in there, that's what it looked like all together. I like that look way better, but without it, it kind of looks dumb. There's holes and stuff missing. So I got to figure out something to reincorporate that into this or change it up somehow. But I just wanted to go over like simple construction. You do have a washer, hardened washer underneath that, so that's not riding on titanium. The bearings aren't riding on titanium, they're riding on that steel right there. So I think that's a smart feature. Blade grind itself looks good. Nice hollow grind with a flat on the tip. 3V, not to a ridiculously thin level, but to a good, what I would consider a hard use style grind. Super nice grinds though, right? They definitely did a good job on the grinds. All right, let me get all back together and give you a conclusion on this thing. Well, I never really, when I sat down, I don't know what I'm going to say half the time before I sit down. I didn't really mean this to be a T1000 video, but I guess it's turned into one, so I might as well just finish my thoughts on it. So, as I was saying before, traded for this one, so I didn't pay like retail price for it, nothing like that. I just traded for it. Is it a good knife? Yeah, it can be, but from the way it comes, for the money they charge, there are so much better options out there. Like, you're paying American money for this now, so like this is kind of where I get a little touchy on that thing. So the $400, the steep price for this Max Ace, right? But you can look at this and see there's not a whole lot of offerings from anybody else. You know, integral, whatever you want to call it, frame, full titanium, crazy ass knife grinds on this one. This is multi-row bearings as well. Like, this is really good action. This is $150 cheaper than that Riot, at least what I've seen advertised prices wise. $150 cheaper. I mean, I already did some work and analyzed this, and this is gonna get more. But you know, sorry for the rambles. Y'all know how it is when you stop by me, stop by my channel. And then you look at like this one, like the proponent, and like this one, like value wise, like I keep saying it, but like I you know, it's like when you get a Tucson, like I'd seen Pistol Pete's version of that, his new Tucson he got, but like those are like unbelievable value. They just don't build knives like this big. I think they got that one Jose let me borrow a 346, I believe is what it was. It's like the biggest thing I think they make. And for guys who don't like bruisers or don't have bruisers, they think that's a big knife. To me, it's all right. Like, it's not, I mean, I ain't gonna say it's not a bruiser, but that's like borderline, right? That's kind of like the XM24 for me. It's borderline, right? It's not really quite as big as I like, but it's close. So this knife kind of sort of lengthwise feels that way to me. It's not like, not the most, I mean, it's got enough girth on it. It reminds me a lot of like a Direware Solo. Like, it's not a long knife, but it's a nice chunky knife. It's chunk, and I wouldn't have thought with all the hollowed out stuff that I would have liked that, because that's not my flavor really at all. Like, you know me, I like the full weight, but actually it's actually decent weight because they made it pretty thick. The whole body of this thing's pretty thick, so by hollowing it out, that's not bad. Like, I would have preferred it still full weight, but it's not bad the way it is. I gotta have that finger flick and that thumb flick, and even when you get to it, you just got no leverage, and it just hurts the shit out of your hand to get it deployed. So it's basically a flipper only knife, which is fine. Like, you know, like a Solo and stuff, most of those are flipper only too. You know what you're getting before you get into it. But the secondary lock thing on this, to me, totally hokey pokey for a hard used knife. Like, you can't have these teeny tiny springs and gears and all that stuff I showed you. Like, it's ridiculous for a hard used knife. Like, I don't see. To me, it just doesn't make any sense at all. But it's kind of like going back to this Max Ace. So this is M390, and M390 to me in a hard used knife sucks too. Like, I've already chipped this one a little bit. Like, it's not a bad chip, but it's chippy. It's like, that's a steel that's good edge retention, but it's not nearly as tough as it needs to be for a bruiser style knife, in my opinion. What I look for in a knife, anyhow. So when I use this one, I got to be a little more careful, even though it's a big beefy knife. It's still, it's chippy. It's really easy to hit something and chip it, and it's just how I use my knives. I'm not saying I'm the expert or nothing like that, but just how I use my knives. Like, I generally don't get along with knives like that. Like, it just is what it is. This is M392. Like, I'm not saying, I believe it is M390 on this one. But how it's ground is, it's just a little bit better. Like, it's a little more robust ground, so it's not as bad. And when they treat it softer, which most Chinese companies do, the M390, it gives it a chance, in my opinion. Like, I'm not looking for the optimum heat treat for edge retention. I'm looking for that toughness. So, you know, you can get into that debate on some of that stuff. And everybody tests knives and does different things with their knives. I've seen like Blades and Fades did like a tough test with I think it was a Demco and a Spyderco. And he, you know, first thing he did was take them to 17 degrees. Like, anything I won't consider a tough knife, I'm not sharpening to 17 degrees personally. Like, you do what you want to with your knives, but these knives with a 17-degree bevel would be, it'd look like the primary bevel. It'd be huge. Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? I do agree that sometimes you got to reprofile knives. Like, I reprofile this one, and now it has a decently, you know, fine tip, but it's not super thin. This is XHP, which, you know, I've never really had a ton of experience with hard using that, because that, I wouldn't consider that really a bruiser. That's like secondary for me. What else? Oh, I did go ahead and regrind one of my tiers, the Damascus tier. I like the way it came out look wise, but the problem is, let me see if I can scratch it and hear it. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but when I etched it too long, and this became super lumpy bumpy now. So like, if the bearings were riding on this, it'd be all the way around it. So I gotta take it all the way back down to bare metal, polish it back up, and try to re-etch it, but doing something different with it. So, learning process for me. I'm pretty happy with that one came out too, but I initially had done this whole combination grind with the hollow and then the flat that I've been working on that I did on the other tier. Did that on that this one as well to start with. It didn't work out the way I wanted again, so but I fixed this one by just doing it flat grind. So just to show you the grind, sorry about some of the marks on it, like I'm getting ready to resand it all back down, but you can see the grind lines on this one and the reprofile. Like, you know, the tiers have a bigger belly up front and that kind of more flatness. This one almost had like a little bit of a recurve to it now. So reprofiled this one, but I'm pretty happy with that grind came out too, even though it was basically a redo from a redo. But you know, that's how you learn. I'm rambling, but let's see. Oh yeah, one more thing I wanted to put out there for any of you guys in the AZ area, or the guys that want to come. October the 7th, I think I'm gonna try to host a knife meetup here at the house. I know it's like 3 weeks or something like that, but if any of you guys happen to be in AZ or happen to be visiting or something like that and want to come by, let me know. We'll hook it up. But hopefully shooting for October 7th for a knife meetup. And if it don't work out, it don't work out. But I'm gonna try for it anyhow. So all right. I guess I'm gonna call it this week. I got a lot of stuff to get done. So y'all be cool. We'll check y'all next week. Later.